So we'll get going again. Again, thanks so much for coming to our looking at the New Hampshire SAS results on the Cambium portal. And I just wanted to give everybody a heads up just in the beginning of this. We have scheduled an hour and a half for this. I know a lot of our webinars end up being about an hour. This one we did give a little bit of extra time so that we could make sure at the end we were able to answer all the questions. So just a heads up, we've got an hour and a half scheduled for this one. Also, just some webinar logistics and introductions here. First of all, we want to thank the New Hampshire Department of Education. They are the reason that we are able to do these webinars. Our partnership with them has been great in being able to get information out to the state. So thank you so much for their continued support. You are muted. Nobody is really able to talk on here, so don't be afraid that we can hear you. We cannot. Also, if you could please ask your questions in the Q&A portion of the screen. Because it's a webinar format, it's a little tricky to raise hands and unmute. Perhaps if there's less people on at the end, we'll be able to do that. But if you answer your questions there, couple of reasons to do that. If we get a lot of them, then we're able to answer a lot of them at one time. Also, we can type responses to you, or we can have Marissa or Kristen feed them to me live, or vice versa, depending on who is presenting. The information that is in this webinar will be emailed to you. So you will get the slide deck. You will get a link to where you'll be able to find the recording in the next couple of days. And then you'll also get the PD certificate for this webinar. So you will be receiving all that information 24 hours after this particular webinar ends. And then there is also a brief survey at the end of this. We would love your feedback. We appreciate it. It's how we change this from an hour to an hour and a half. So we do value your feedback and would love to hear your thoughts. Just a heads up for who we have here today. I'm Heather Jenkins. I am joined by Marissa Hooper from Demonstrated Success as well, and Kristen Crawford from New Hampshire Department of Education. So I'll just let them say a quick hello.
Hi, everyone.
And hi, I'm Kristen Crawford, Assessment Administrator. Thanks for being here.
Right. So as we start this, first things first is the fundamental purpose of school is learning, not just teaching. We know this. We want to make sure that we have our students being able to show everything they know about what they've learned. So we're moving on and seeing how the results are for the New Hampshire SAS assessment. I'm going to turn off my camera. Just, I think if we all turn them off, you get a bigger screen, hopefully. So our agenda for this afternoon is the reporting structure for how the New Hampshire SAS summative assessments are reported, how they're scored, and then we're going to show you a whole bunch of different ways to view the New Hampshire SAS summative data. Also the different reports that you're able to see. There's a little bit of information about the parent portal. I know more and more of you are starting to get questions about how to print the tickets for parents and all of that. So we'll talk about that. And that's also the time that we can talk about different scenarios or questions you might have about how the data is shown in the Cambium portal. First and foremost, the information that you're going to see on the portal. The math and science results are available just as soon as you the tests are finished and completed. Depending on the time of year, if it's super busy and there's a lot of testing going on, it might take 24 hours or so for it to be showing up, but for the most part, it should be pretty instant. The ELA results, the students have to finish both the reading and the writing portions before the results will show up in the portal. I will say that I've had a couple of folks letting me know that a decent amount of their students are taking up to a week or so to be able to show up in the portal. It might have to do with some scoring issues or having it be hand scored for your writing portions. But some of them are taking a little bit longer, so just be patient. I haven't seen it go much more than a week, especially for this time of year when there's a lot of testing going on.
And yeah, Heather, I'll just add to that. It is about 18% of New Hampshire student essays are rooted to hand scoring. Some of it's just random. There's like a minimum threshold for every prompt. And then sometimes if there's a condition code on that essay. So if you are seeing that, as Heather said, it actually can be up to 10 days. Generally, it's been taking closer to 7. But if you see, if your ELA results, if you don't have them after the 10-day threshold, you can reach out to my office and we can look into it. But generally, that's what's going on.
Thanks, Kristen. All right. Anybody who's set up as a teacher in Tide, so a TE, you need to have rosters set up to be able to view any test results. So you could give and administer the assessment all day long, but you will not be able to see any of the results unless you have students rostered to you. The other thing is that if you are a school test coordinator or district test coordinator, you can see results without any rosters, so any administrators can see it that way. If you are a proctor, you will not be able to, even if you have rosters set up, you will not be able to see any results at all within the Cambium portal. For proctors, that's just that. You're able to administer the assessments and proctor them, but you won't see any student results. So most of the time, if you can't see any student results, it's because you're a teacher, but you haven't had any rosters within the Cambium portal and within Tide set up for you. So that would need to be something that your system administrator would need to do. General information about rostering. And we get a lot of questions about how can we roster students. Just so you know, students can be part of multiple rosters. So if they have multiple teachers, specifically in middle school, that happens a lot. They can be part of more than one roster. Typically, people give the teachers or TE level users access to their class. Sometimes they give them to a whole grade just so that they can be able to see the class and the whole grade together. They can have multiple rosters at a time. So if I teach specifically 3rd grade, I could have just my class as a roster, and I could also be rostered to the whole 3rd grade. The information when we do create rosters, just so you know, that's not just for the summatives. If you do modulars or interms, it helps you see the information there as well. Even if the assessment has been already administered, you can roster the students after the administration and those teachers can see the results. So you don't have to do it before they administer. Just some roster recommendations for wording. In the past, there's been a lot of sort of tricky things happening with how how the rosters are set up. So these are just a couple of examples of how rosters might be set up, whether it be for a specific class, a specific grade level, and so on and so forth. So just a couple of recommendations there. When it comes to the reporting structure and the way the summatives are reported, we have at the top here our subjects, and then underneath that we have what are called reporting categories. Then we have clusters of standards and then the individual standards underneath them. So just starting with the subjects, if we're talking specifically about New Hampshire SAS, we're looking at ELA and math are grades 3 through 8. And then in science, that's grades 5, 8, and 11. if we're looking specifically at where all of the questions are pulled from or what they are aligned to, for math and for ELA, they're directly aligned to the Common Core standards. And for science, it's directly aligned to the next generation science standards. Moving down from subjects, we have what are called reporting categories. A lot of folks look at this as domains. The reason we call them reporting categories is if you specifically look at the math side of things, you're looking at grades 3 through 8. You'll see there's numbers and operations base 10 and numbers and operations fractions. They are in a single reporting category, so they are reported together for an overall reporting category. So they're not necessarily called domains because there's two domains of math in one reporting category. The reason for this is just specifically each section of the assessment needs to have a specific number of questions. So there are some times in which it made sense for us to combine two domains of math into one reporting category. What you will see when we start getting down to it, though, is that you can then see specifically what your clusters and standards are for numbers and operations base 10 and numbers and operations fractions. So you can separate them out, but they get an overall reporting category score that I'll be talking about in just a couple minutes. When we're looking at the reporting categories and the structure of those for math, this is what I was talking about here. You can see operations and algebraic thinking. If you're looking at the Common Core documents, the reporting categories are those big domains of math. You can see here also numbers and operations in base 10. So those are your reporting categories. For ELA, we have reading standards for literature, reading standards for informational text. We also have writing, and then there's a couple of speaking and listening and language standards as well. For science, they're the big sort of areas of science. So you've got physical science, life science, and earth science. Those are your particular reporting categories where you're going to be getting results. And then underneath each reporting category, you have clusters and standards. So I just want to explain a little bit of this here. So right now I'm looking at my specific subject is math. I've got my reporting category is operations and algebraic thinking. And then underneath that, I've got a couple of clusters on this page here. And those are write and interpret numerical expressions and analyze patterns and relationships. What happens is the way that the assessment shows you is that you'll be able to see how they're doing overall with write and interpret numerical expressions, and then you'll be able to see how they do on specifically those two standards. So you've got your clusters, and then you've got your standards underneath it. There's some clusters that you will see that will have multiple standards underneath them, and some have one big standard underneath them. For ELA, the great thing about ELA is for every grade level and for every single one of the New Hampshire SAS assessments for each grade level, you've got the same standards for each grade level. They obviously change in complexity as you go up through the grades, but right here we're looking at ELA as our subject. Reading standards for literature, K to 5 is our specific reporting category. And then underneath that, you've got key ideas and details and craft and structure are your clusters. And then your standards are right underneath there, and they're listed. This is important to be able to kind of see the correlation between what you would see on a Common Core document and what you're going to see in the Cambium Reporting Portal, because you will see if you download information, you might see reading standards for literature, key ideas and details, standard 1. But you will show you kind of how to see the verbiage for what standard 1 is on the reporting portal. But depending on what you're doing in downloading the information, you might just see a 1 under key ideas and details, and you'll have to cross-reference. So that's why we like to show you the documents like this. For specifically for science, You've got what are called your disciplinary core ideas. So underneath physical science here, we're looking at matter and its interactions, motion and stability, forces and interaction, energy, and so on and so forth. Underneath science, you will see these clusters or DCIs, but you do not necessarily see a standard level. It doesn't go down quite that far. It's a little different for science. I haven't seen anything pop up in the chat yet, but definitely if you have any questions about this, let us know, and I'll just keep going here. So what we have now is I want to take what we just talked about with the reporting structure, and I want to talk about how it's scored. This is some of the questions that we get the most when we're looking at data for New Hampshire SAS. So I just want to go through this quickly and show you how it relates. So again, we had our reporting structure. So now we've got our scoring structure is the same thing. For a subject, so for ELA, math, and science, there are 4 levels of proficiency. So as we look at an overall score, you'll see level 1 is below proficient, level 2 is approaching proficient, level 3 is proficient in applying, and level 4 is highly proficient in applying. So each student will get a specific overall level of proficiency for each subject. If you look at the subject scores, the way that they are getting their specific level for the 4 levels here is by what's called a scaled score. So these are what we call cut scores. So you can see on this page, if I'm looking at 3rd grade, a level 1 is less than a 410. And then a level 2 is a 410 through a 430, level 3, 431 to 454, and level 4 is a 455 and above. This is specifically based on a specific student's scaled score. So if you go, I think it's on the next page, Marissa. So if I'm looking at my students here on the left, in the reporting portal, there's this area where you can see a scaled score. So this is how the different level 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s are figured out through those cut scores. And then overall, if you see where it said, can you go back up one? See where it says district and school? You can see that overall, they've got a certain number of students and a certain percentage that are the red, the yellow, the green, and the blue on that performance band. So what happens is each student gets a specific achievement level, and then it's overall for your either school or your district, sometimes the same. In this case, it's the same. That's how that particular information is gathered for your schools. It's all your students' scaled score and where they fall within those achievement levels. For the next one, we're looking at reporting categories. So again, these are those same reporting categories that I showed you before. You've got your math, and again, some of those, depending on the grade level, you can see for math, it changes. Grades 3 through 5 are the same, but then 6, 7, and 8, we've got different domains of math. So you obviously are going to have different reporting categories there. For ELA, it's the same throughout. You've got reading informational, reading literature, and writing. And then science is that earth and space, life science, and physical science. For the reporting categories, you now are no longer looking at 4 proficiency levels. You're looking at only 3. One is low, one is at or approaching, and the other one is on or above. We get a lot of questions about what is the difference between at or approaching and on or above. And the only way I can describe it is you've got low, and then you've got students who aren't quite there yet, and they're approaching, and then you've got students who are meeting the expectations for that particular reporting category. Just know that this is a really sort of relative score, because somebody who's at or approaching could be just barely above the low or just barely underneath the meeting expectations. There's kind of a range there. So you want to be careful. A lot of people look at it and they say, oh, yeah, well, yellow and green, we don't have to worry about. We're just worrying about the red, which may be the case, but there might be some students who just are barely in that yellow that you really need to keep an eye on as well. So we want our students obviously to be in the on or above. For each reporting category, there's specific verbiage for examples of what low means, at or above, or at or approaching, or on or above. There is no sort of cut scores that we get from Cambium to be able to tell us who falls into the low, at or approaching, or on or above, because we don't really get that information for a reporting category. Also, one of the big questions we get is why is there only 3 levels of performance for a reporting category? And the information that we've received and from what we understand is you've got on a whole assessment, you've got, between 35 and 40 points, which means for a reporting category, you have far less than that. And it's really hard to start putting students into 4 different categories when your number of points might be a total of 12 points. How do we figure out who is proficient and highly proficient from that? So it's gone to those 3 bands. What I want to also just make sure you know is that the on or above, just because somebody is a level 3 or 4 in their overall score does not mean that they are in the green or on or above for a reporting category. They could be in the low portion of one of the reporting categories and super high in all the other ones. So it doesn't really fall in the way you would think it is. So we want to make sure that you're looking at it overall and then also by reporting category. When we're looking on the portal for our reporting category, this is where you're seeing those performance levels by reporting category. We're showing science right here, so you can see earth, space, life science, and physical science, and then how each student is doing for that particular type of science for that specific reporting category. Also, you can see in the blue column all the way to the left, you'll see 4 levels of reporting, because we have the below, approaching, proficient, and highly proficient in the total, but then for each reporting category, there's just those 3 levels of reporting. We're not missing the blue. It just goes down to the 3 from there. When we're looking at clusters and standards, here's where it gets really interesting on the portal. So we can see, we're looking at this by roster right now, but if we're looking at a specific cluster, I've got 2 clusters that I'm looking at right now for reading literary texts. So I see craft and structure, and I see integration of knowledge and ideas. So those are our specific clusters. You can see overall for the performance distribution for reading literary text, you can see the average score and the performance distribution for each one of those rosters. You do not necessarily get that for your clusters and for your standards. You get something just a little bit different. Is for each standard, you'll start to see these symbols. And the symbols are going to match up to how your students are doing specifically on that particular standard. So the cool thing is in the portal, when you see standard 4 and you're not sure what it is, you can hover over it and you can see the actual verbiage for that particular standard. If you download it, you don't see the verbiage, so that's where I wanted to make sure you understood the cross-referencing. But what I want to talk about right now are those specific for literary text for these standards, what these symbols mean. So as you're looking in the proficient column, there's 2 columns. One was proficient and one was weak or strong. Starting with proficient, you see this check mark means above proficiency standard. That sort of consumer reports is at or near proficiency standard, and the X is below proficiency standard. So that is equal to the green, the yellow, and then the red. For some of you who have smaller numbers of students in your schools and your districts, you might get insufficient information, which means there's just not enough students to be able to give you an overall score for those particular standards, just because there's just not enough data to be able to do that. Now, the one thing that I want to make sure that you understand is on the portal, this is what you're seeing here. But when you download it, you're going to see the words. You won't have just the symbols. So it's helpful when you download it to be able to see the symbols. Also, if you hit the little I, it will show you the symbol. As we go through, now if I'm looking at the weak or strong column, this is where it can get a little bit more confusing. So weak or strong is based off of just your students and just this particular assessment. So right now we're looking at reading literary text. So we're looking at the actual reading portion of the assessment. As you go through and you look at all of the standards for this particular reading assessment, there's going to be 9 or 10 standards for reading literary text and 9 or 10 for reading informational text, depending on your grade level. What it does is it says, out of all of these standards, it will tell me for my students on this assessment, this is how they scored for this particular assessment, what their best sort of scoring standard was, all the way down to their sort of weakest standard when it came to answering the questions. And so this weak or strong shows us in relation to the standards on this assessment, is this a area of strength for my students? Is this average or performance is similar to the test as a whole, or is this an area of weakness for my students? The insufficient information is going to remain insufficient information if your specific the sort of proficiency in this was insufficient information. So you may have for your school, you might be a really high performing school. You might have a lot of those checks for the proficiency that's above proficiency standard. But you still will also have something that says it's an area of weakness, because relatively speaking, even though your students are really high performing, you are going to have a standard or more than one standard that is an area of weakness. So you will still see that negative. It also works really well for those who are below proficiency standard. You might see a lot of red, but then relatively speaking, you might have a couple of standards that are an area of strength, so that you can say, okay, overall, even though my students are not where exactly we want them to be, they're doing a little bit better in these standards compared to others. And then there are some schools that get just a couple of those and a lot of these equal signs, because in general, your standards are so close together and they're performing so similarly on them that you don't have a lot of the areas of strengths or areas of weakness. Yeah, that's a lot of words and a lot of explaining. There's many districts that we work with that just look at that proficiency and they don't look at the weak or strong. It's again just a second indicator to be able to kind of help you figure out where you might be able to focus some additional student understanding, or somewhere to focus in the future to say, I'm not sure that they're able to show what they know. And they're able to show it in our classroom, but there's something going on with them being able to transfer it to the assessment. So let's take a peek at what we're doing for our instruction to see if we can get these kids to be a little bit more proficient with that. I think there's a question there. So that's a good question. So Stacy's asking how the standards are related, like the number of questions on the assessment, how it's related to achieve the core, specifically for math. I know that the department has been looking at sort of they're called the blueprints for the New Hampshire SAS, and making sure it's as aligned as possible with Achieve the Core. There are some times in which it is not fully aligned to Achieve the Core, but for the most part, the number of points possible on the assessment is pretty close to what the Achieve the Core says as something that is a major standard for that particular grade level. There are, again, a couple of discrepancies in some of the information that you're going to get. We do have the possible points and the relation for Achieve the Core. If you're interested in it, it will be part of the resources that you get tomorrow. So if you want to take a peek at that and reach out if you have any questions, definitely let us know. For science, couple of just clarifications here. Again, this is your reporting category as Earth and Space Science. You have your clusters, you do not have your standards. So basically your disciplinary core ideas are each going to be listed, and you'll have that proficient or weak or strong for each one of those particular DCIs. All right. I don't see any other questions, so
All right.
Marissa, you can take it away.
Awesome. And we will start now looking at the data that Heather had just explained in the Cambium Reporting Portal and what the summative data looks like in there. So we like to build our slide decks as sort of a step-by-step, so that way you can refer back to the slide deck if you have questions about sort of where we went, how to access a particular section that we talked about. So the first step would be to go into the portal. And once you do that, you're going to choose the test administration up at the top. Normally you have some options, and then you have administering the test, and then you have the after testing section where we're going to go into reporting. And we're going to log in, and you're going to be able to do that since you've administered the assessments this year. And you're going to be brought to this page here. This is where you can view the interim results, the modular results, and the summative results, which we're going to be doing. You can click just ELA or math or science if you want to choose a particular subject, or you can choose all of the summatives and they will pop up on your dashboard. And this is what the dashboard looks like once you press the Go to Dashboard. It's going to show you the average of all the grade level subject scores. So we can see math, we can see science, and we can see ELA. And this is from a school coordinator or district coordinator access on that dashboard. If you only teach a particular subject and have access to those particular students, you may not see all of this. But this is where we can see the grades that were tested within your particular school or district. We have some demo data in here. We can see the date that the last summative assessment was taken. So you know sort of if all your students were tested, if only some of your students were tested. And then you can see the percentage of that level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4 for that subject for your students in every single grade. We're going to show you some math, ELA, and science results, but we're going to start with some math results. So if we can click into the New Hampshire SAS Summative for math, our dashboard then gives us the performance on tests, where we can see a lot of information. We can see the assessment name, which is the summative and the grade level. We can see the test group, the grade level, the reason, we can see the student count, the average score for that grade level. Then we can see the performance distribution for that grade level, and again, that date last taken. This is the individual grade level results, as I had stated. Again, that dashboard has all of the grade level results. Here's where we start to dig into the specific grade levels themselves. We are going to, in just a second, I just wanted to add in that we can also filter through the left here. We have this bar which has the reporting filters, and that's where we can also access the benchmarks, the interims, the summatives. For the modulars and the interims, you might use different test reasons, and so you have those options there. And again, at that school coordinator or district coordinator access, you can choose particular schools if you have multiple elementary schools in your district or middle schools and high schools for grade 11. We are going to jump into some grade 5 data. And once we jump into grade 5, depending again how many schools you may have in your district, what's going to pop up is this next page here, the district performance on test, where you can see the district, the amount of students that has taken this particular assessment, that average scaled score, the performance distribution, and the percent of students proficient. And then you're also going to see that information for each one of the schools within your district. So again, there's that total. What Heather was explaining earlier, it's that 4 levels of proficiency that you can get for the total score on the 5th grade math summative assessment. And again, looking at that average scaled score and the performance distribution. If you click into this symbol here, this is where you can see those scaled scores, the average cut scores for where the students fall within those cut scores. So for 3rd through 8th grade, the level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4 cut scores. So a lot of times we get asked to send that information along, but just know that you can access it right within the portal itself. And over to the right here, these are the reporting categories Heather was talking about earlier. This is where we have those domains of math, and we might be reporting out on 2 domains of math. We also have modeling and problem solving and using mathematical reasoning as a reporting category as well. If I click into one of those, you can see the arrows at the top. If I click into that, it's going to expand, and the screenshot does get kind of small to see, but just know that you can click that and open it and get some more information. So this is for that reporting category of operations and algebraic thinking, and we can see the reporting category here. We can see the clusters, which is analyzing patterns and relationships and writing and interpreting numerical expressions within that reporting category. And then we can see the standards. So again, if you click into that blue circle, that's where you can see the verbiage for that particular standard. And as Heather had explained to us, the proficiency and the weak or strong indicator listed under each standard. There's also symbols. If you do click for the more information, it will give you what each symbol means right within the Cambium portal itself. So we have that proficiency rating and then the weak or strong. We can also click into a particular school, and this is going to give us the rosters that Heather had talked about setting up. So we can see the rosters that could be, you know, the different teachers, the grade level, however you want to set those up. This is where you would see that list here. And so you also may have a line that says students not in any roster, and that's because they have not been added to a particular roster yet. And you can still have that even if you do have some rosters set up. And this is within those rosters as well as we sort of dig deeper into a particular class, however it might be. We have those total scores, that student count, we have the test completion rate, the average scaled score, the performance distribution, and the percent proficient. And for those rosters as well, we can also have the information for all the reporting categories, again, digging down to the roster level. So we can look at modeling and problem solving and using mathematical reasoning. Those are 2 reporting categories. we can see that for those rosters, the percentage distribution of students that were below proficient, at or approaching proficiency, or on or above. And again, that's where the 4 levels moves to the 3 levels. And also for reporting categories, these do not show cluster or standard level scores. That is because the questions given on the assessment come from multiple reporting categories, so it can be clusters and standards within different domains of math, and so therefore they're not student specific, so we can't break it down to that level. So for modeling and problem solving and using mathematical reasoning, we can only see that on or above, at or approaching, or below. We can keep going. We can get into now each particular roster that we may have. This example, we've rostered by specific grade level teachers. And so this is where we can see our list of students and their names and their information on how they did on this summative math grade 5 assessment. So we can see their total scaled score, and again, having that district and school at the top is always going to be there, and then that performance distribution as well. But now we can see the individual levels that that student has scored. Again, this is the 4 levels of proficiency. And for each student, we can then go into the different reporting categories as well. We can click these and they can extend. For the reporting categories, their student level data only goes this far. So we can't see into the cluster or standard level because of the different questions that students get, the different amount of possible points. So this is about as far as we can dig into the particular reporting categories for individual student data. But for each reporting category, we can then get those 3 levels of proficiency for students. We can get that low, at or approaching, or on or above for each one. And I'm going to talk a little bit about ELA for a minute because it is a little bit different when we take into account the writing scores. So for ELA, this is again that district performance on test. We have the reporting categories. We have the reading informational text, reading literary text, and then writing. So just a quick reminder that the scores are shown after both the reading and writing assignments or summative assessments have been given and students have completed. So we can expand the reading informational text and the reading literary text. And this is where we can see the clusters and standards, just like we could with the math reporting categories. And again, having those 2 indicators, the proficiency level, and then the weak or strong. We can also see some writing dimensions this is right now at the school level. If we expand, this is what we're given for our essay. So we now have, the 3 types of writing. We have the informative or explanatory, narrative writing, and opinion writing. And here we can see, I know it's a little small, so I apologize, but we can see the conventions under informative and explanatory, the evidence and elaboration, and organization purpose. Conventions, students can get from 0 to 2 points. Evidence and elaboration, I apologize, students can get from 1 to 4 points, and organization and purpose, students can get from 1 to 4 points. And so what this particular report is giving you is the percentage of students, and right below the student count, of the students who scored that particular amount of points on that particular part of the writing essay. And what you can also see here is we see some blue, not blue, we see some green and red. And what this means is that when you might see green or red and you may not, but what this is telling us is since we're looking at this report for all of the schools in this district, if we see a green arrow, that means that this school scored the highest percentage of points for this particular writing piece for all of the schools. So for example, if we looked at school one for the organization and purpose, we see 3%. That means that they scored the highest amount of points for the 4 points amongst all the schools in the district. And same for the red. This means that this school, the students scored the lowest amount of points relative to all the schools in this particular district. And if we can drill down into the school, again, we're given the rosters, and we can drill into the rosters as well. And we're given student information. We can again expand those reporting categories here, and we can get some more information. Just a reminder that these two reporting categories, we cannot dig into the cluster and standard level. We can see those 3 levels though, the low, at or approaching, or on or above. And then for writing, again, when you expand it, it gets pretty small. But what you'll see is that, for example, Simone Biles, she only has information for the informative or explanatory writing. And so students get one type of writing. So for the other 2 types of writing, you'll see an NA there. So you can see the amount of points that that particular student scored for the different pieces of the writing. And then a little bit about the science. We, as a reminder, only have data available for grades 5, 8, and 11. And so we can dig into grade 5 here. Again, we're going to see all of our school information within our particular district, depending again what access you have. And we have those reporting categories, the earth and space sciences, life sciences, and physical sciences. And we can expand that and get some more information. And this is where, again, we can see the proficiency or the weak or strong indicators for the disciplinary core ideas. And if we dig into a particular school and into a particular roster to get student level data, we can expand those reporting categories and again, get those 3 levels indicating where students fell within a particular reporting category. So I just threw out a lot of information at you. So if you have any questions, please let us know. But that was just to inform you on what you're going to see in the Cambium Reporting Portal and the information you can see at the school, roster, and student level. We're now going to get into some of the reports that we can download for ourselves, for students, for parents, within the reporting portal that you might not know are available to you. So we're going to first talk about the individual student report. So this particular report shows the individual student results. You can do this for ELA, math, or science. There are 2 reports that you can download. You can do a simple report or a detailed report. We're going to show you how to do both. The biggest the biggest difference that you'll see in these 2 reports is that the detailed report has longitudinal data on this particular student, whereas the simple report does not. So both include the student scores and then the performance on each reporting category. I am going to stop for a second just because I did see a question, and it's about that prompt copy match that we actually have gotten a few questions on this year. And so what that means is when students are taking information from what they had read and writing about it, if they copy 70% or more, it's going to give you that prompt copy match. And so if you were looking at that student level writing performance, they took, 70% of what was in the reading that they had done and put it into their writing. So if Kristen, if you want to elaborate more, you definitely can on what you're sort of looking for, but I know it's that 70%.
Yes, yeah. So the threshold is set at 70% or more. And we actually sort of encourage you to make sure students understand that at least half of the writing needs to be their own words. As because I just think 70%, we don't want to sort of count words and sort of worry about students misunderstanding the fraction of what part is theirs and stuff. So if you just tell them at least half of what they're writing has to be their own words, then that eliminates the chance that it is all just, that they'll get that code. I looked at a few today and like they're, sometimes it's up to 90+% where they write very few words of their own. But the reason I wanted to jump in, the one place I think that it is hardest sort of to understand is when we are asking the argument or the opinion essays, where we're asking students to cite sources. That does include citing sources. So it's great that they're citing their sources, but just make sure your students understand that they also have to write, not just cite the sources for what their opinion is, but to also state that in their own words, in addition to citing the sources.
Awesome. Thanks, Kristen. And I just want to, I apologize for stopping mid-slide. I just wanted to address that to make sure we sort of wrapped up that last section for everybody. And so again, you'll have that information in the reports as well. And this report, it can be used to send to parents. You can print supplemental materials as well, and that will help with parents understanding the scores if they may have any questions. The report can also be batch printed, so you can do that by the school, grade, or roster level, and you can also do it for individual students. So what you want to do here is, this was the dashboard, and we had clicked into the particular assessments, and what we want to do is click on the right under the feature and tools, we want to download student results. When you do that, you're going to be given quite a few options. We want to select the test reason. This again are those interims or modular tests when you give them to students. There's different test reasons. But for the summative, we are going to be choosing the Spring 2025 SAS Summative. And we'll go next. We then need to choose which assessment we want. So we can select by subject, we can select by grade level. And again, this is one of those batch options where we can choose all of the summative math for grades 3 through 8. We'll click next, and then we can choose up to 3 schools. Again, depending, what you can view at your what access you have. Just know that you can choose up to 3 schools for this report. So you can click those off. And the report type is on the left here. So we have the individual student report. We're doing a single PDF. This again is that simple report. And we can generate that. And what this will bring us to is the dashboard where we want to go to this secure file center. You also may see that when you go to the test administration on the New Hampshire SAS reporting portal website that we had first talked about. But if we go to the secure file center, we will see the download of the PDF that we had just created. And we can click into that here. And this will bring us that individual student report. And this, again, is that simple report for math. So this shows us the score of the student that we had printed this for. And again, it gives us those descriptors for each level. And it also gives us how the students performed on different areas of the test. So this particular student, we can see how they did on measurement data and geometry, modeling and problem solving, their performance and the performance level description. And again, we have these the symbols here and a description of what those are, the low, the at or approaching, or on or above. And now we're just going to show you a little bit about the detailed report and the information you can see there. So again, we're going to go to downloading student results. We're going to be choosing that spring 2025 New Hampshire SAS. We can choose the assessments that we want. And again, up to 3 schools. And where this is going to change is we're now going to, for the PDF type, choose a detailed report. And we can generate that and go to our secure file center, and that report will be listed here. And so for this detailed report, we're going to again get that longitudinal information for this student. So again, we're going to get the score for this particular student and the description of that proficiency level. And then we can see the longitudinal trend chart information. So because we chose a 4th grade student as an example, we're only going to get information for their spring 2025 summative assessment and then their spring 2024 because they started taking it in 3rd grade. So we can see here, this was in 3rd grade, the scaled score and the level, and then in 4th grade. And a lot of times not a lot of times, but we do get the that, scaled score went up by 20 points. We can see, however, they went from a proficiency level 4 to level 3. And that's because if you look at those cut scores, you can see that and this graph as well, is that the ranges change as you're going through the grade levels. And again, we can also see for each reporting category how this student did on the different reporting categories, again, letting us know what the results mean, that performance level description. And this is that supplemental material that we were talking about for the student data that you can send home with parents. And so it just gives them information about understanding their student scores, something you can post as well to help them, again, understand what they're looking at. And then we are going to show you how to download the student data file. So these files we can download at the district, school, roster, or student level. For these reports, we can download the results to an XLS, CSV, or TXT file. We can do this for the ELA, math, or science results. And these results will include the overall scores and the reporting category scores. If you download the ELA results, those will also include the individual writing scores. So how we do that is, again, we're going to go to the download student results, and we will choose the spring 2025 summative assessment. This time I'm going to show you that if we just wanted to do ELA grade 5, that's the assessment we're going to download. We'll click next, and all the students that we want. These are some demo schools that we have in here. And you can see on the right here that we now have the student data file checked instead of the individual student report. And then we also have the report format. This is where we can choose how we want to download this particular information. And then we can generate that report. We'll go to that secure file center where we can choose the report we downloaded onto our computer. And it will download here. This is where we can see the summative ELA grade 5, the scaled score, the performance level, the Lexile score, the reading informational text, all of that information. And this is where, again, you can see an example of that prompt copy match. If you're getting that information for a student, what does that mean? So you can see that in the report as well. And this is where, again, it's one of the only ways that you can see a list of the individual student scores on the writing assessment. So to print these results, it's a similar process to downloading the results, but the format is a little bit different. And you can download the results again at that district, school, or roster or student level. You can print these results, you can save them as a PDF or download them as these different files. They can be used for ELA, math, or science. And the results will include overall scores and the reporting category scores. And then the ELA results will include the individual writing scores. So if we go back to that dashboard, we can see up here, this is where we can also navigate to different parts that we had showed you today on the reporting portal. So when we're printing these results, it works best if we're on the Performance by Student tab, which is right here. So before we were under the Performance by Roster, and now we can click the Performance by Student. And if we press print here, so that's right to the right of the downloading student results, this is what will come up where we can again save as a PDF, we can save it to Excel or CSV or print it. So this is an example of saving to a PDF, or excuse me, sorry, saving to Excel. We can confirm that and download the student results. Again, getting into that secure file center, choosing, and this is where we can see the district information, the school information, and then the list of students, their scaled score, performance. This is a science example of printing those results. So this can give you that information there. Lastly, we have that longitudinal report. So this is a comparative report, which is going to show the summative overall scores for a group of students over multiple years. So we had talked about seeing that for an individual student, but this is for a group of students. This report is available as a district level report and also a school level report. The report is going to be available for ELA and math. And the report is only available for grades 4 and above, and that's just because current grade 3 students did not take the New Hampshire SAS last year. And that will be the same moving forward for all grade 3 students. So if we click into one of the assessments, this is the math example. And so we're going to choose the summative for math grade 5. Again, we can choose grade 4 or above. We're just doing a grade 5 example. And here is where we are going to go into that features and tools. And we are going to choose the build longitudinal report. And once we choose that, this is where we can see the longitudinal report for math in grade 5. So this is where we can see their overall score performance to the left here, and then we can see their performance for the individual reporting categories. There is an arrow here, so you can keep clicking. And then we also have the information down here when they took the test in 2023, 2024, and 2025. We can see their overall test results, the percentage of students in level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4. So this gives us that report for a group of students within our particular school. And up here as well in that overall, we can see, again, that score performance. We can also print these results up to the right here, and we can save to a PDF as well. So we have any of these options for this longitudinal report. We will confirm that. It will show up in our secure file center, and we will download and put it on the computer. So those are the different types of reports that we can get from the the Cambium Reporting Portal just to give us some more information for, again, students, our class, our grade levels, and again, we can share it with students, with parents, which leads us right into our next section about the parent portal and the reporting scenarios. I didn't see any more questions, but again, please ask them.
Yeah, I'm gonna actually just interrupt for just a second because there was something in the Q&A. Somebody had asked about can we share how the writing is scored? She knows there's a total score of 10, and there are many patterns in the results, like a 1-1-1, a 2-2-2. Just so that you can understand, for each type of writing, there are 3 different scores a student will get. They'll get a convention score, and that score is 0 to 2. They'll get an evidence and elaboration score that's scored 1 through 4, and they'll also get an organization and purpose score, which is also from 1 to 4. So that's how you make up the 10 points. I would not say, I mean, I know we have, you know, uh, pipe in if you would like to, as I'm talking, Kristen, but it is not scored by AI. Like you're thinking like AI, somebody put it into like Chat GPT and all of that. There is a specific scoring engine that has been trained. That's why your writing was at an earlier window last year. They had a pilot. Everything was hand scored. They're training that particular scoring engine to be able to look for information and to be able to kind of expand its understanding of students writing at particular grade levels. But there are specific writing rubrics that we have. There are specific, they'll be in your materials tomorrow, so you'll see the rubrics and how they're scored. And then you will also see what are called writing exemplars for, there's just a couple different types of writing for that one. It's not for narrative yet, but you'll be able to see sort of what a perfect score is, why they're scoring a certain way. But the writing rubric should be able to help you understand what students need to be able to do to score certain things. But I would not say necessarily that there is, if you're seeing a pattern in your results, it could just be that your students are across the board sort of at the lower level of writing or the mid-level or a little bit higher than that. But if you want to add anything, Kristen, definitely let me know. That you can chime in on that.
Thanks, Heather. I did just in the chat where the question was answered, I put that first part of your response, just so the point distribution for the three reporting categories of the writing itself. But as Heather mentioned, on the New Hampshire SAS portal resources tab, that's where the current scoring guides are for all the essays. And I actually was just notified at the end of last week that there's scoring guides. We'll be adding to those for some additional essays, some of the narratives and such. Unfortunately, they were not, ready sooner in this year, but they will be a resource to use over the fall and winter next year if desired. And I just wanted to add, I think Heather did a good job of sort of explaining the scoring engine, and this is something that sort of industry-wide has been going on for about a decade. So it is a little different than sort of the AI chat features that we're all more used to seeing in the news and such. But they really are, trained specifically, like Heather said, for grade level input and then by the specific prompt. So it's not like it's a generic grade 3 narrative scoring engine. It's each of those narrative prompts does have its own scoring engine assigned to it. If you do have further questions, feel free to reach out to my office. I am not an expert in auto scoring, but I can point you in the direction of additional resources, or I can always bring questions back to the vendor if you do have specific questions that I can't answer.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. All right, we're just going to go. We've had a few questions about the parent portal and giving that information. So we want to show you quickly how you can distribute that information to the families of your students. So the first thing you want to do again is go into the portal. We have the link here. You can also just type in New Hampshire SAS. It will bring you right there. You are going to go into that test administration. And here we're going to go into TIE. This is under the preparing for testing. And we will need to log in. And we have the preparing for testing, administering tests, and then we have the after testing. And this is for a teacher access. This is the view that they would have for that after testing. And this is where you can go. And here you can select, again, depending what access you have. We have district, school. If you're looking for a particular grade level, you can also search for a particular student. So there's different ways that you can search. But when you put the information in there that you need, you're going to choose search. And this is where you'll get a list of students. And so this is where you can check which students you'll want to print the code template. It will give the last name, first name, and then the access code to the right, again, with some more information there. But this is where, again, you can choose specific students, one student, or all your students by clicking in the dark gray area check mark at the top there. And under the print, this is where you can print and press selected access codes. And once you do that, it'll bring you here. It looks a lot like the test tickets that you print for the New Hampshire SAS for students. So this is where you can choose the layout. The 5x2 is the same one as those the tickets that are normally printed for students. This is where you can press print and those access codes will be printed. Or excuse me, they'll be automatically downloaded and then you can print them there. So super easy, super quick, but this is here for you if you need to refer back to it to give to parents or guardians within your district. I don't see any questions, but please let us know if you have any related to either the parent access codes or anything else we had talked about, because now what we wanted to get from you is, there's anything you were looking to see today or go over that we maybe didn't hit upon in any of our webinar today. We wanted to give you the opportunity to tell us what you want to see in the chat, in the Q&A. If there's anything you have another question about, we wanted to give you some extra time to make sure that we addressed any questions. So I'm just going to give it a minute for you to type in the chat or the Q&A if there's anything you want to see. Okay, I'm going to leave that open if you're in the middle of chatting or, excuse me, typing of anything you want to see. Please continue. But if you don't, I'm just going to continue on and we can go back and address anything you may have, any questions as well. Just a few reminders. We want your feedback for the webinar. We want to know, did we not address anything you were hoping to see? We love to take that feedback and just make sure that every time we do any sort of webinar, we're improving it in some way. So thank you so much for taking the time to complete that short survey that's going to pop up. And we wanted to let you know that unless you're high school, grade 11 attending today, you may not be interested in our Understanding Your SAT Results webinar tomorrow, but know that that is happening tomorrow. So you can share with the high school if you have the ability to do that. We also have next Monday, this is for administrators who have access to Data Studio. We're talking more about the New Hampshire SAS 3 to 8 results. Again, that's someone with administrative access for Data Studio. But then we have a webinar the next day, June 3rd, next Tuesday, where we're going to be, and I know this was a question in the Q&A, we're going to be doing a webinar on now understanding and leveraging the New Hampshire SAS 3 to 8 results within Data Studio. So if you've taken a peek within Data Studio, you have questions about New Hampshire SAS, please come to that webinar. We'll be able to address those there. Some of the reporting looks a little different, and so this is where we're going to now talk about how we can leverage those results as well. This is our contact information, Heather, me, and Kristen. So if you have any more questions, you can reach out to us. Again, you're going to get a copy of this slide deck with any resources. 24, I'm going to say 24 to 48 hours from now. You'll get information and be able to look at this again, reach out to questions, or if you go look at data within the learning portal and some questions come up, please do reach to us. Early. We're going to stay on for just a minute if you have any more questions or there's anything you want to see, but if not, we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and hope to see you next week at the Data Studio webinar for New Hampshire SAS.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.